Outlaw Sports is brought to you by Molson Canadian, made from Canada, and Rocky Mountain Barbecue, Alberta barbecue cuisine at its best.
It's been a tough year in the NHL for losing players and past players. It was a tough weekend because of the 10th anniversary to 9/11. And it affected hockey as well 10 years ago. We'll get through some of these stories, but this is, we tape our show once a week, and unfortunately last week Brad McCrimmon was killed when he was a part of that Russian team that went down in their old airplane. And you've heard guys like Dave King talk about this in the past. The scariest part about coaching in Russia, the road trips.
Mark Giordano of the Flames refuted that, and some other guys have
really?
too. Not refute, saying they had no fear. I mean, Mark Giordano of the Flames played there for a year, and he said we flew Aeroflot, and, which is the national airlines, and he said we had no problem. So, yeah, Dave King did say that, but I've heard some other guys saying it wasn't quite
that bad. Eh?
So you're hearing both, but I think there's 13 times more air accidents over in Russia than there is anywhere else in the world. So there's something to it.
Yeah. You probably had as much to do with Brad McCrimmon when you covered the Flames as anybody, and we've seen a good and a bad side to Brad. There's some funny moments with him. Can you share some of those stories with us as we look back at the life and times of Brad McCrimmon?
Well, he wasn't a nice guy to be with a lot of the times. I mean, sometimes you say when people die, you say, oh, he was a great guy. Brad wasn't a great guy to the media. He was a cranky, and I asked some of his former teammates like Poplinski and Patterson, they even admitted that, he was cantankerous to them too, but there was a hard outside but a softer inside. And he was kind of putting that hard outside on. That's the way he got to know you better and how you reacted to that. He always had his stall right by the door into the dressing room, and as soon as the media came in, he always had derogatory comments when we entered in the dressing room, and because of the breeze that would come in through the door, he was always naked, and he'd be slamming that door all the time and say bad things under his breath about the media. Here's one story, though. Here's one story. He was named captain, and here's something, Mike. Usually captains of hockey teams are named by the coaching staff. For the first time, the Flames had said, players, you vote for the captain in 1988. And they voted for Brad McCrimmon, which was a bit of a surprise. He was kind of the union guy, kind of I'll stand up against the coach. So we were doing the Flames on 2-7 up in Edmonton. The game ended early. We had a pad, about 40-minute post-game show. We needed guests. So I said, well, get the new captain, Brad McCrimmon. So our studio was across the hall from the Flames dressing room. So Brad McCrimmon, soon after the game, comes into the studio. We're about to go on the air. 10 seconds ago, he sits down, but he's naked, except for his underwear and black socks.
Oh, that's quite a visual.
So there's two things. You can't go on live TV with a basically naked hockey player. And secondly, where do you put the microphone? He was a hairy guy, so I guess we could have put it on his chest. So our floor director, Scott Slade was his name, had a leather jacket. So he threw it to Brad McCrimmon. Brad put it on just before, as we're going on
like
here.
This.
It was, and he had the collar up. So now he's playing the role. Now he's putting me on. And I do know this, that he put me on because he told me about last year when he came in with Detroit Red Wings as an assistant coach. I really got you that time, didn't I? He was so proud, and he wouldn't answer any questions. So your teammates voted you as captain, Brad, not the coaching staff. Yeah, that's pretty much what happened. So he let me sweat for the whole time, and he was quite proud of that fact. But he looked so ridiculous on the air, because the Flames are used to having distinguished guys as their captains. I don't know who he would have replaced in '88.
In '90, wouldn't he?
In 1990. He arrived here in '88, and of course they had the triumvirate, right? Hunter, McDonald,
with Gilmore really being the leader.
True. 1990, after those guys had all gone, that's when he became. So this was in 1990.
That year, you may remember this, the year they won the Stanley Cup. Mike Toth and I went on the air, and there was a lot of trade rumors about Mike Vernon. And I know you know where I'm going with this story. And I said, well, there's a member, and this was true. This guy told me we're really concerned about Mike Vernon's lifestyle.
Yeah, I remember that.
his lifestyle. And I went on the air saying that, and I said, but I'm sticking up for Vernon. I said, the thing is, they may be concerned about it, but who are you going to trade him to, and what are you going to get in return? Because he is money when it comes to playoff goaltenders. You know, you got to have somebody, if you're going to make the trade, get somebody back in return. Well, I go down there, and of course, the little man in the mask, you mother beep beep, you got beep beep beep, every word in the book thrown at me. So I took, and I said, well, Mike, if you want to talk about it, talk here. If you would have watched the show, you would have seen I was defending.
He always says, I heard.
Yeah.
You said that.
So
he did that to me too.
Then all of a sudden, here comes McCrimmon. What the F are you talking about? You know, and right into here. And I said, Brad, if you're trying to scare me, you're not. I'm the same size as you. I'm not worried about you. If you want to talk about it man to man, let's do it. You of all people, you go out and drink with all those guys at the TV station. I said, so? Yeah, I'm proud of that. And so anyhow, as the day went on, instead of a confrontation, a fist fight, it turned out to be shaking hands and off we go.
Two boys from Saskatchewan
talking the way two boys. We probably should have bought each other a beer and let it go. Then doing interviews after him later, the one thing I found out about McCrimmon, you have to find the lowest common denominator. Saskatchewan, Brandon, that kind of thing. That way he lowered his guard down.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. About what he knows.
He could
right?
be cantankerous on the outside, but he wanted to see how you reacted.
Sure.
And then the not softer, but the real guy, the caring guy would come out.
Yeah.
Interesting conversation with him. I remember he and I were just talking with a bunch of people about what we did when we were younger. And you know, I was saying, you know, I grew up in Toronto in the 60s. It was a great time. I mean, I tried to get to Woodstock, the famous festival. Of course, that's a long story why I didn't get there. But I was saying Toronto in the 60s was fantastic. Outdoor concerts just started. And he looked at me and says, I was in Brandon in the 70s. That was the place to be. And he was serious, and I didn't know how to react. Brandon in the 70s, you know, like Paris in the 20s or New York in the 70s or something, I don't know.
Well, it'd be akin to living in Regina as a Rough Rider. When he was a wheat king, I suppose they were the kings of the world there, as the riders are in Saskatchewan.
You know, we're joking a bit about Brad McCrimmon. When he was an assistant coach with the Detroit Red Wings, he would, of course, come with the Wings to the saddle and to play the Flames. On the morning skates, he and George Johnson and I, or DeHatchick and I, would talk to him for about 15, 20 minutes down in the bowels, and it was so much fun. That softer, more, that hardcore guy wasn't there anymore. You didn't have to crack that nut. He was really good. And that's when he told me he loved putting me on all the time. Yeah, you like that, eh? I didn't answer your questions. And he had great stories, and I could see why he was going to be a good coach, or was a good coach, and would be a good head coach, because he was more cerebral than I thought and knew as a player.
Tired of going to redneck barbecues? Well, you better call Rocky Mountain Barbecue. Alberta barbecue cuisine at its best. Great tasting food, clean and efficient service. Check us out online or call Rocky Mountain Barbecue.